Now, we have a fireside chat on the topic future-proofing frontline workforce management with technological resilience. I would like to introduce our moderator for this topic, Dr. Varadharaju Janardhanan, Vice President of Human Resources, Flipkart, who is a seasoned global HR leader with 28 plus years of experience, serves as Vice President and Head HR at Flipkart. Focusing on talent, growth, and HR strategy, he is also a respected author and coach, also speaker known for contributions to HR, neuroscience, and behavior psychology. I would like to now introduce the members for this fireside chat. Mr. Varun Nagalia, Vice President, HR Tech and Services, IKEA. Mr. Anand Arora, Assistant Vice President, Human Resources, Landmark Group. Ms. Mohana MD, Chief People and Culture Officer, BetterPlace. And last but definitely not the least, Ms. Swapna Nair, Vice President and Head Human Resources, Khatabook. Can we all put our hands together for our moderator and the members for this chat?
Between lunch and you. So we'll try to make as interesting as possible. I have a truly diverse panel here. And the topic is also quite interesting. And I was trying to do a little bit of research yesterday around this topic. And there were two very important insights that really came in. One from BCG and one from Bain. The research that really says the jobs that exist today, right? What percentage it would exist in 2030? Any guess? Some numbers? Okay, all right. So, interesting fact, it's just going to be only 15%. So, the fact of the life is so much of technological advancement and changing job roles is a key reason to that. Adding to that, there is another research that really says those who really embrace change are like 2.5 times more impactful in their job and they're more fulfilled in their professional journey, right? Keeping these two research in mind, what those really explains us is the talent landscape is changing and is changing really, really rapid. And that goes pretty well with today's topic and I think Mohana in her previous talk beautifully spoke about how technology is really impacting this frontline workforce management. Without much delay, Varun, you are next to me. Let me ask the question. Do you really kind of acknowledge the research, right? If so, how rapidly the landscape is changing, specifically the frontline management?
I should have chosen a better seat. I fully agree with the research. I think in terms of where the talent landscape is going and talent landscape is evolving, I think there are a couple big shifts that we have seen in the past sort of decade or so, if you would. I'll just point out two of them, which love to see if there's any firm disagreement in the room around that. One is digitization or digital transformation. I know we keep talking about digital transformation in the context of enterprises and the companies, and Mona, you spoke about the smartphone revolution in India. We are now hyper-connected in this decade than where we were. And if you think about our frontline workers, again, the different genres of frontline workers Mohana spoke about, think about each of those in the quadrant and think how they are hyper-connected at an individual level as well, not just as an enterprise level, if you would. So that's one big shift, in terms of how the work would change and why the work would change. The other one, for me, I think is empowerment and flexibility. And we've seen this a lot more in the white-collar workers. And Mona, you were talking a little bit about the evolution of what that means for our frontline workforce. But we are seeing trends where our frontline workforce is getting more and more empowered. They want more flexibility in the shifts. We speak about gig work and the gig work in the context of our startups today. But then gig work is going to reap into the enterprise very soon. to your point of how the work happens today and what percentage of that work will stay in a decade from now. So massive shifts in terms of that would change, and it will have, in my view, significant impact in terms of how we upskill, how we provide flexibility, how we run our organization, and how we connect our last mile from a culture perspective, especially our frontline population.
Yeah, I think you have touched on very important. What I really liked is the culture of empowerment, being very, very flexible, and more importantly, we are in the world of upskilling and reskilling. Very interesting. So now, with this, Swapna, I just want to really take your pearls of wisdom on, with so much changing, right? Do you see like technology playing as an enabler in this journey for this frontline workforce management to be very adaptable and also be very agile? Or maybe Mohana, both of you, one of you can really take this question.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Vardha, I know you're from Flipkart, and I know I have a time limit, but I'm just going to answer this with a quick story, if that's okay, and I'll be very mindful of the time. With your permission, the story is not about Flipkart. It's a borrowed story from Amazon, though. Right. The story starts in this warehouse, which is about 2 hours from Pune. One early morning, the warehouse manager hears a commotion outside the factory and just steps out to figure out what's going on, right? And there are a bunch of workers who are trying to, including the security, who are trying to assuage a gentleman who is standing there. When asked what's going on, he says that, the man who's come there has come in looking for buying a transformer car. And though these guys have been trying to convince him that it's not available in that outlet and he should just go and buy it online, he refuses to leave, right? The manager looks at this guy and feels that, there's something more to this story than meets the eye. So calls him inside and asks him what's going on. And that's when he learns that this gentleman has a 10-year-old son who's been diagnosed of cancer, right, with very little chance of survival, and is due for a surgery in 2 days. Now, the boy has asked his father for this transformer car before he could get to the surgery, right? The father now goes around the town, across all the toy stores, does not find it. Somebody tells him to check out online, realizes that it's not going to come in before the surgery, and is very distraught. And that's when somebody says, hey, there is this warehouse that is there. Maybe you may find it there. And that explains why the gentleman was waiting there since morning. Now the manager obviously is completely distraught listening to this, right? And immediately goes and checks online, checks his systems to see where this is available, and realizes that the only warehouse that that specific card is available is in Delhi. And there's no way he can get it before the child could get into surgery, right? So he goes ahead and invokes something called Code Blue, and if there's anybody from Amazon, I'm sure they'll have the right word for it, but it's very equivalent to a Code Blue, where you say, I need all hands on deck to make something extraordinary happen, right? And once he does this, he has pretty much, whoever is available from tech product across the org available for this, to be solving this problem, right? They get on board, they realize that, they have to get it from Delhi to Pune. They manage to figure out who is the pickup person, how do they get it to the flight, and they manage to get it to Pune. They have somebody waiting for the toy in Pune, from Pune, while it is going via road to this small town. There are Amazon delivery folks, agents who are waiting on the way. They pick up the toy, they gift wrap it, and then they get it to the hospital one night before the surgery. Right. Now, needless to say, right, I think when you talk about, while Amazon is known for customer obsession, needless to say, this, I think, is a beautiful example of how technology can be harnessed, but at the same time in a very humanized way, right? And I think that goes back to the point that you spoke about empowerment. I think the way to think about your frontline workforce in relation to technology is saying that, hey, can we look at empowering them? Can we look at making them feel inclusive and connected? So when I look at technology, it is not just about saying that, hey, these are a bunch of folks who are off-roll, right? And I just need them to go do a pick-up job. But I want them to understand that they are actually such an integral element to generating the revenue of the organization. They are such an integral element to the experience that customers have about the organization. And if they don't feel connected back, if they are not empowered, there is no way on earth that we are going to enable, and get to where we want to be, right? So when you look at harnessing technology, I think it's very important to be able to put that lens and say that there are certain decisions that technology can help you make, and then there is that thin line where you bring in that human element into it. Right?
Yeah. So what I really liked is you're trying to really balance the use of technology and the human touch. So tech and touch should be the two sides of the same coin, right? In fact, Flipkart does this really well.
No, absolutely. This example just happened to be from Amazon.
By the way, the big billion day is around the corner. I think you will really enjoy the experience, right? Okay, right. Moving to Mohana, right? You spoke a lot about technology, how it can be an enabler in your previous session. Can you just throw a little more light of how this can really help the frontline workforce to be more agile, more adaptable, and how organizations can really support that?
Yeah. I think that's a fairly pertinent question. One thing is I want to start from an organization side, right? Most organizations today, like I was referring to, don't really have a software layer at all to manage frontline workforce. Now, in case you are trying to, and I think the future holds true that you probably need to, because the jobs essentially are getting more stable. So your need to manage workforce, which is otherwise going to leave you just for 100 rupees or 50 rupees that day, is going to become very costly for you to run your business. So having said that, take very simple software, which is integratable, which is customizable, because you don't know all the needs today of the frontline workers in the manner that you will probably end up knowing if you give it that opportunity and attention. And why am I saying this? That customizable software is very crucial, because if you take a standardized software and plug it into your systems that don't integrate to other software that you have, it's anyways going to delay your implementation. So those are the factors that you need to think about. From an organization lens, I would always encourage, when you talk to frontline workers, guards, etc., they always tell you they're actually scared to use a software, right? They're scared. You're smiling, so you know it. They worry that if I do something wrong, is there a wrong input, it might cost me my job. So it is so important to pick and bring in simple, usable tech solutions for people to feel encouraged to actually use, and so that they understand. The other aspect is vernacular, right? How are you going to bring that agility and adoption into your organization? It's not that the frontline workforce does not know how to use technology, but it is about sometimes understanding that they are spread and distributed all around India. So the same thing they may not understand in the same language. So how do you bring the vernacular aspect into your technology build-up as well? And I'm also tempted to talk about the fact that in a lot of our engagement with CHROs and CEOs around India, particularly as a starting point to discuss, is that more and more factories which are very, very distributed, people are spread so far away from each other, they also, and a lot of them are actually contracted through contractors who contract and then who contract, right? So it's never that I am in a direct contract or I have one particular principal contractor who's actually bringing the contract labor largely from a workforce standpoint. Given all of these dynamics, people want to still feel connected. So tech is actually becoming a very, very interesting play for factories to bring them all on a collaborative platform. So there are organizations which we talk to which really tell us that, hey, I was actually able to get on WhatsApp-like forums where, you take away levels. Your topmost level is talking on a crisis mode to somebody who's a worker who's actually probably handling a very critical part of the business where something went wrong the previous night. And they know the issues on the go. So anything that we are experiencing, it's the same experience the frontline worker wants, right? So agility can be built, engagement can be built, collaboration can be built through relevant technology that you can actually bring in to the play between enterprises as well as frontline workforce.
So all I can just say is keep it simple.
Keep it simple is very crucial for anyone, I think, in today's
Yeah.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, keep it simple. Varun, you are keeping quiet. So let me just come back. So as we are really moving future forward, right? What do you think the gig workforce would contribute to our overall workforce strategy? Okay, that's one. Second, I think post-COVID, we are trying to really figure out, is it going to be like completely remote work, hybrid, or come back to office, right? So what really coming out is either a remote work or a hybrid. So with the workforce, the way we really look is changing, how we really operate is changing. What's your thought in terms of how the future going to be and how technology can enable this, specifically the frontline workforce?
Well, two parts of a great question. To get the first one out, like from a gig work perspective, where are we going? If any of you have seen any of the recent future of work studies, in my last organization, I've been in IKEA less than a year, but in my last organization, we did a study with World Economic Forum around future of work and where we are evolving around that. I think more than, as you mentioned, right, it's going to be less than 15% in terms of what the work will be. But a big shift, and you're seeing this more in the frontline workforce, as and Mohana, the sort of the 4 grid that you had, the 2x2, the shift in the workforce from daily task-based job, uneven jobs into more stable jobs is happening in real time. However, more and more people want to keep that flexibility. So if you think about the gig work, that gig work is going to be reality a lot more in the frontline workforce, and that will put pressure as an enterprise for you to think about. You used to do this offline scheduling, rostering of your retail stores or of your frontline workforce. That can't be done anymore. You'll have to do this at scale, you'll have to do this quick, and you'll have to offer flexibility. I want to work today, and this is something that COVID has also brought in. I want to work today, but I don't want to work tomorrow. So how do I offer flexibility to my frontline workforce to be able to sort of offer and do a shift swap, for example? So some of those aspects of flexibility and empowerment will play out from a gig and a pressure in from a gig perspective, but also into how we work and how will we work in the future. The other big one I think is as gig work would come in, a large part of our stability that we have in the frontline workforce, especially in sectors like hospitality and retail, which have high turnover. Now think about an organization that is churning out a fifth or a fourth of its workforce every year. So your hire to retire cycles, how you do your onboarding, how quickly can you get people productive, how do you retain them? And I think Professor Ram had this slide up talking about 41% in the McKinsey study that he was talking about leave because they don't feel they have enough career paths. But traditional career paths in the frontline workforce have been, you grow from a shift worker to a shift supervisor, et cetera, around that, or a bank or a frontline clerk to a supervisor for the store, et cetera, around that. That will fundamentally shift into non-linear career paths. The study that we did with the World Economic Forum said that there is a 50% skill overlap between a forklift operator and a cashier. A forklift operator and a cashier. So as we think about our organizations and we think about our staffing for our stores and our shift planning for the stores, how can we think about people moving more dynamically across the board? How do we think about adding the gig workforce along with the stable workforce for the seasonality that you have? And I think those will be some big shifts. And I think the last bit for me is the hyper connectivity that I spoke about earlier on, and Mona, you touched upon the connectivity, if you would. That, I think, will be the vehicle for us to keep the culture of the organization alive for the last mile. Whether it is the upskilling, the learning, or the connection, as you said, at the top, right to the feet on the street, the connection and the belonging, I think will be driven by technology, in my view.
I think you said a lot. So I'm going to really pick the last one, specifically the culture. I really liked it. It's a sense of belongingness, right? And it's a tough one, specifically on the frontline workforce. So Swapna, I'm just going to really bounce off this thought. Is it really possible? Number one. Number two, can technology play a role in that?
When you ask, is it really possible, you're talking about the sense of belonging piece, right? Specifically. So before, I think a lot of the conversation now is actually happening on gig workers in today's, given the landscape today, which is your Uber, Ola, pretty much most startups, right? I'm going to take you a little bit back, right? How many of, I'm sure all of you here have heard of Tupperware, right? So the gig economy is not new. It's been around for a really, really long time, right? Tupperware established what at that point in time, typically, through women who were at home, right? Established a complete amazing marketing model, just, tapping into the women talent, the housewives who were at home, right? By ensuring, and the way Tupperware went about doing this was getting women to actually hold kitty parties. And, when communities come together to go ahead and market their products and then have the whole, enroll women into this entire thing, right? They had a great amount of success at that point in time. The whole basis of that was, can we connect? Can we have communities coming together, connect, and then take it from there? Coming back to India, right? If you look at, I don't know how many of you here have heard of Kudumbashree. Kerala has this program which is initiated by the government for the women, for the frontline working women, where, and this was largely done to ensure that they're promoting the MSME segment, cottage industries and so on and so forth, right? And this was a concept started about 30, 40 years back, where women from the lower strata were brought together and employment opportunities were created. And the way they kept all of them connected, I mean, it's beautiful. You must read up. It's a case study by itself, right? One of the reasons Kudumbashree has been phenomenally successful to this day is because of the way in which it's structured, right? They've created multiple layers where they have ensured that the social welfare of these women are taken care of. So there are structures, there are people who are there to help them stay connected, to make sure they're addressing issues that they're going through, right? Similarly with, not just social well-being in terms of ensuring that the financial well-being and independence, right? Not just earning, how do you ensure they're financially independent, right? So taking care of some of these elements is something that's done beautifully, and it's lasted for many years, and it's doing exceptionally well. So I think a leap for us to take, even when we bring in technology, is that there is no way you're going to bring in a technology, implement it, and say that adopt. Like she said, simplify, but the most important thing there is not just simplifying, but also creating a feedback loop and telling them, hey, I'll listen to you. If it's not comfortable for you to use this technology, I want to know why, and I want to go change it and come back to you, right? Because that tells them that you're listening in, right? You're making the change, right? So unless and until you show that you're walking the talk and you care, you can bring in the best of technology and fail, right? So it has to be that combination.
Yeah, I think you really said the secret sauce, continuous listening. All right. Great. And I have the last question for Mohana, and then maybe we'll open up to audience for one or two questions. Maybe, Mohana, you can take 2 minutes for this, right? We spoke a lot, right? So what's important is also how is an organization instill the culture of innovation specifically in this sector, in this workforce, right? To kind of build that adaptability, resilience. Of course, technology is part of that. Can you throw some light on it?
I think with the juncture that we are in, every company is almost a technology company, right? And innovation is just something that's got a very symbiotic relationship with tech and tech adoption, and constantly sort of making incremental improvements through the innovation mindset, right? Now, I think when you look at organizations, they are trying their best to bring in tech, which actually is different, which is very new, which is very current and for the future. That's something all of us really try to agree. and to the fact that it actually talks to the people's problems and solves a problem, right? So innovation mindset should also be tied to organizations being able to solve some sort of a problem at the end of the day when we're talking especially about the frontline workforce, which is still at the hygiene level. The problems are really at the hygiene level. I don't know so much, while in parallel we're talking so much about skill building and all of those things. The hygiene, access to financial inclusion, the hygiene, access to jobs, I think we need to find technology or that innovative mindset to take jobs to people, get jobs to find, in an innovative way, find the job itself. And those are, I think my proposition is just that take care of the hygiene in innovative ways, use tech to make it just get done faster. That's really what I would say.
Nice. I think without addressing the hygiene, I don't think we will really move forward. Fantastic. We have another 5 minutes. If you have questions to the panelists, I think we can take at least like 2 questions. Yes.
Hi, I'm Edward. I head the talent acquisition in a company. My question is, I'm just picking up the thread from Ram's slide. There was a slide called pull and push. And this is a very relevant topic that we are talking on the front line, managing workforce management, right? So how do you actually create an environment that creates a impactful push information to the frontline workforce than being they on the other side of pulling the information?
I personally have a slightly different point of view, if I can start with that, with your permission. Yeah. I think your long-term sustenance is only going to happen when you create enough pull for people to ask for it. You can push as much as we like. So that's my sort of, my personal core belief, around that from a change point of view. In terms of how do we make sure that there is enough in it for them to pull it, is something that each organization needs to chart their path out, if you would. If I were to take an example to the conversation we were having in the panel around gig workforce or around the evolution and the upskilling of the workforce, it's quite evident that a lot of people who did traditional frontline jobs will not have the same jobs in 10 years from now. Now, as an organization, we can choose to ignore, or we can choose to take them on the journey with us, if you would. And that's where the adjacencies, the jobs that they can do as an organization, the culture that we want to take them on the journey with us, and for them to feel connected at the top of the vision. And I think somebody said, you are, whether you're doing this on your own or you're part of a grand whole, and you feel part of that purpose and the mission of the organization is super, super important for us to do. And then if we can show them more tangible opportunities that did not exist before, like an example I gave you, and at my last organization, we actually had somebody who we shifted to a completely new domain and job. As an organization today, IKEA promotes non-traditional jobs significantly across their sort of frontline workforce as well. So are we able to sustain? Are we able to take them on the journey with us? But then do we show up when the rubber hits the road for us to be able to offer those opportunities and back them? I think that's going to create your pull on the back of which you can sort of add more to it.
Yeah, thank you. So this is more on what Swapna ma'am said. I think the listening, right? And I understand, I think you can actually create all that environment, but are you creating that courageous environment for somebody to come and ask for it? And unless and until you don't create that environment, they're not going to come and ask for it, right? I think then these are all the people who are running on the front line, and you just need to create that platform as much as information to get pushed. And that was my thought process.
Yeah, agreed. And in the interest of time, can we just take another question? Sure. Yeah. One last question. Yeah.
Hi, this is Nitin. So about the diverse workforce, when we have...
Keep the mic closer.
Yeah, is it better? Yeah. All right, this is Nitin. I want to understand about the culture. How do we build a culture when we have a diverse workforce? We have a dynamic, millennials or Gen Z, Gen X, whatever you call, and when we have the 40 plus. who are very slow learners. If you see Maslow's theory, the need is very different. The need for the youngsters is very different. Balancing the culture. So how do you really manage that as a culture and people manager?
Right. So, see, I can talk from experience. We have fairly and equally distributed workforce on either side, right? On one side, we have the tech product workforce, which is your mainstream, and then we have an equally large size of customer support and field sales folks, right? I think the basic, the bottom line would be that, you know, are you able to look at the entire frontline workforce and think about culture, organization building, employee benefits, everything like the way you would think for your mainstream workforce, right? And the day I think we start doing that, we will truly actually build processes, we will build a technology, we will build everything where, you know, it becomes very seamless for them and they start feeling connected. So it is a process at the end of the day, right? It starts with pushing a few things, but then going into a listening mode, going back, making changes and improving on a day-to-day basis. But the real thing is, do you actually care? Do you care enough to actually create everything for them like the way you would create for mainstream workforce?
Thanks. I think we are top of time. Brilliant 2 questions. Thanks, panelists. I think you shared a lot of perspective, interesting perspective. I'm sure there is going to be a lot of takeaway for all of you. Thanks, folks.
I would like to thank our moderator, Mr. Dr. Varadharaju Janardhanan, and also our members for this fireside chat, Mr. Varun Nagalia, Ms. Mohana, and Ms. Swapna Nair. I request Ms. Mohana, MD, to felicitate Dr. Varadharaju Janardhanan, Vice President, Human Resources, Flipkart. Can we please give a huge round of applause for our moderator? I now request Ms. Mohana to felicitate Mr. Varun Nagalia, Vice President, HR Tech and Services, IKEA. And last but not the least, I request Ms. Mohana to felicitate Ms. Swapna Nair, Vice President and Head Human Resources, Khatabook.